Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and our show today is the Corner Bookstore. And as you may recall, the first Thursday of every month, we have our special friend and co-host, Mr. Red O'Loughlin, who is here with me today. We're going to be discussing his latest work, The Essential New Author's Guide, a comprehensive checklist for writing and publishing your book on time and within budget. You may also be aware that Red is a huge part of our platform here. He is a co-host on he has his own show on Talking Heads. He's a co-host on The Wise Ones, and he has a new show coming. He's also an incredible publisher, and he has helped me with every one of my books to become a number one new release or number one bestseller. Let's welcome Red to the show. Red, come on out. Hello.
Howdy, y'all. Just another wonderful day down here in paradise. Little P here in the Houston, Texas area.
Are you sweating it out there?
Actually, it's calmed off quite a bit. We're down in the low to mid 90s. Heat factor still about 108 to 116, but not necessarily cooler. But fortunately, we're going to get some triple-digit weather coming back up again. And for those who don't know me, I love hot, flat, and humid. That's just the way I've always been. To me, a nice night is like 84 degrees. Leave the windows open, I'm fine. Daytime, if it pushes 100, so what? But regardless, that's me. That's what I like. I like when I look out and the highest thing in sight's a curb. I like it flat. So if I have humidity, flatness, and hot, I'm in seventh heaven.
I'm right there with you, Red, and I think this studio is probably 100 and some degrees myself. I feel like I'm outside. But you just celebrated a very special event that many of us will never have the opportunity to do. Tell us about that.
Monday was my wife, Marilyn, and my 55th wedding anniversary. Back about 1968, in fact, January 3rd, I was sitting in front of a Whataburger. She went in with a good friend of mine, best friend of mine at that time, turned out to be a best man at our wedding. They went in to get something. I can't remember why I delayed. Well, I know why I delayed. I had to get the ring out of where it was hidden in the car. And she came out, and I gave her a ring, asked her to marry me. That was about almost 3 years after I had met her. And so that was January 3rd, 1968. We set a date, July 3rd, 6 months later. And July 3rd was very important because at that time where we were both working, July 3rd was a Wednesday. The following day was a public holiday. So we both worked on the day of our wedding. We got out as early as we could in the afternoon. And so we didn't take a day of holiday for the 3rd. So when the holiday and vacation started, the vacation was actually Monday. So I had 5 days of vacation, but I was really off. It seemed like almost 2 weeks. And so we left a little town down south of Corpus Christi and drove up to the coast, spent a couple nights there on the coast, and then went up to Hemisphere in San Antonio, spent a week there, and then came on back and had a very, very delightful honeymoon. And we've had, I think, 8 since then that we've gone to various places to celebrate the honeymoon again. In fact, the re-celebration of that very first honeymoon was about 6, 7, 8 years ago. We went back to where we got married in Violet, Texas. We spent a night in Rockport, Texas, where we spent our first night on honeymoon. Then we moved to San Antonio. We drove to San Antonio, did all the things we did at the places that still exist. And then on the way back, we're talking about a movie we had seen called The Way with Martin Sheen. It's about the Camino de Santiago, walking 500 miles across Spain. And on that trip back of that 8th honeymoon, we both came to the conclusion, actually, Marilyn said, if you can guarantee me a private room, private bath every night, I'll consider doing it. And so for the next year, we did nothing but walk. A year later, we ended up in Spain. We took a bus up into France and then walked over the Pyrenees Mountains from France into Spain. And then we walked the rest of the way, 500 miles in 30 days. And that was all a result of that 8th honeymoon that we had taken in and gotten together. But anyway, 55 years as of last Monday, and we had a wonderful, wonderful time.
Congratulations, Red. That is an incredible accomplishment. As I mentioned, very few of us will ever see that. So congratulations to you and Marilyn. You are a beautiful couple. And I'm so glad that I can call you my friend. So thanks again.
Yeah. You always make me blush a little bit.
Well, listen, you've earned it. And we started off the show. We were expecting our guest, Peter Pontsa, who wasn't here. And apparently he is now backstage. So we haven't had a chance to actually speak with him before we're bringing him out, which I like to do. But let's welcome Peter Pontsa to the program. Hi, Peter.
Hi, how are you?
Nice to have you with us. Where are you joining us from today?
Ontario, Canada.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to the Corner Bookstore, and I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Red O'Loughlin.
Nice to meet you, Red.
Hi, Peter.
So, Peter, we'd love to have you share what type of work it is that you've created. How do you consider yourself in terms of genres and your work as an author?
Definitely a crime writer. I have liked thrillers and crime writers for a long time. I've had a number of them that I really enjoy, like Daniel Silva, David Baldacci, Child, what's his first name now? Kind of slipped a little bit, but there's a number of them. And I've also joined the Canadian Crime Writers of Canada, which is a wonderful group. They're all pretty well crime writers, and there's a large group of us here in Canada, and we're all basically writing the same genre. So it's one that I feel comfortable with.
I have to say it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So do you have to have somewhat of a twisted mind to be writing about crime? I mean, I love watching crime shows as well. So
Well, I don't know. Maybe you do a little bit. What do you think, Red? I don't know. I think that sometimes you do have to have a little bit of an imagination, but yeah, you sometimes have to dig deep into the psyche of some of these criminals and find out what drives them and what psychology is involved behind them and what motivates them. And then you have to turn that around and find out about your protagonist and make sure that he understands these people and tries to straighten the whole situation out. So yeah, it's fun.
Well, I think there's a little bit of difference sometimes between when we're reading the book and we're mentally absorbing everything that we're seeing, and when we actually see it on the screen. My wife and I were watching a movie last night, and she knew whether it was body language, it was something, but she knew who the bad guy was, even though he wasn't manifesting it. But it was just something about that way that character was doing. I'm not sure that I would catch that in the book, although you read the mind sometimes of the characters, and you have to be very careful. I think I am not a fiction writer. I have one book I'm working on from one of my last missions, flying on Russian submarines out in the Atlantic during the Cold War, and I'm putting together the dialogue. But when you have those different characters and you're trying to get inside their minds, that's a pretty tough thing to keep straight all the time, I would imagine.
Yes. I mean, when I first start with these characters, I do a profile on them. And sometimes I go so far as to even do their horoscope, because the horoscope really can tell you a lot about what kind of people they are. But then we start to look about whether they were in trouble when they were younger, how were their parents, and then you can try to extrapolate whether they were a little corrupted for one reason or another, and that kind of follows them through life. But then there's always that other aspect that sometimes people can be criminals, but they can do it instantly, like the manslaughter type of situation where all of a sudden you just lose your mind. And usually this is something that happens with married couples if there's infidelity or something. That's one crime. And then there's other crimes that are plotted and other crimes that just happen because they happen. But when you look at the psychology of these people, you really have to look at where they came from and how they developed over time. And a lot of times they can be good people. They can actually be family. They can have family members. They can be married. They can be, but on the other side, they've got this sinister, twisted part to them that makes them so interesting, you see.
Peter, that's really fascinating in terms of the file that you created and the research that you do. So, how far in advance do you have to start working on this before you actually start writing? Or are you doing them simultaneously?
Well, actually, I try to get my characters lined up first. And then I find afterwards that there may be auxiliary characters that fit in because otherwise you are not going to be able to have a full story. So,
Yeah. And so I like what you also just said, that especially for watching something on television or for reading in a book, there has to be something likable about that character, because we, at least what I found, you start to really like them and then you find out, oh no, no, not that I loved you, I like you, and now you're this terrible person. So do you, when you're writing, do you get your audience to buy in to like the character and then you do a twist?
uh, well, in the first book, I didn't. I started right off with him being a very sinister gambler and triad gang member right from the beginning. And of course, the other person was a culture minister. I think I tried to portray a balance between good and evil, even though there was a streak in the culture minister that was a little bit bad, but he had a reason for being that way because he was looking at bringing back cultural. He was a Chinese minister of culture, so I'll make that clear that he was looking for getting back some of the artifacts that were taken away over the years. So his idea of doing that was with there's no holds barred. He would get it in any way he possibly could. But on the other hand, he was a poet and a laureate, and he was well liked because he did improve the culture for the country. So there's that conflict. But then on the other hand, you have this triad member who's a real sinister man, who is working together with these two, and it's kind of a symbiotic racial relationship, but it's not really a truly a sincere one because there's always this conflict. One may turn against the other. You see.
Thank you, Peter. I want to talk more about your writing, but you were doing a different type of writing in an industry that I love going to the dentist. I know it must be something wrong with me, but tell us about your experience in the dental industry.
I was a dental technician for many, many years before I started my dental supply company. And that was a bit of a fluke because we were in Europe with my mother-in-law. She hadn't been back to Holland since she was a young lady. So we took her, my wife and I, and they apparently got lost and they decided they were going to go to something called the VVV, which is basically like the AA. And I decided like, wait a minute, there's something in the, like saw this tooth in the window and I decided to say, you guys go, I'm going to go visit. So I dropped into this dental lab and I was really interested to see how on this side of the big pond, how these people were living and what kind of lifestyle they had and whatever. While I was there, he showed me some products I had never seen before. And so when I got back home, I made some inquiries to the company. The company was out of Germany. And they told me they had a North American distributor. And I said, well, I don't think they're doing a good job because I've been in Canada for most of my career. I've never seen these products here. So after maybe about 6 months of back and forth with the export manager, they invited me to go to Germany. And I picked up an exclusive for all of Canada of this product line. And I came back and we started at the dental supply company. We had it for 23 years before we sold it to my competitor, who was really interested in filling in an area he didn't have. So it was actually a pretty good thing for us. But that's how I got started in that particular part of it. But I'm like you. I still get the shakes when I go to the dentist, especially the hygienist.
I absolutely love it because I want to get gold stars because I sounds crazy, but I brush my teeth 5 times a day. I floss 5 times a day, mouthwash. But anyway, enough of that. So you started doing some writing for the dental industry. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I started. Well, a friend of mine was involved with the Dental Technicians Association. They had a magazine, like a association magazine. He asked me to write some articles, and I did do some technical articles, and then that started moving a little further along. I had later on when we started working in the advertising area and marketing area of our company, I met a gentleman who had a journal, and many. He had, after a while, he became quite well known in the North America, and he ended up with about 7 or 8 different journals. But at one time, he was just the one, and we used him primarily for advertising, and he would ask me if I would put an accompanying article with it. So that was how we did our marketing at one point, and then that started growing until I started writing a lot of articles, and some became clinical, technical articles, because basically the company I was representing wouldn't have anyone involved unless they knew they had a dental background, which made me kind of valuable for them and also valuable for my own company. So we did do a lot of treatment planning and things like that, and that made it into the magazines and the journals across Canada. Besides the fact that I also wrote my own newsletter, and we had our own printer in-house, and so we were printing these and they were going out, I think, quarterly to our customers. So yeah, that's where I really started writing, and I found there was a bit of a change between going from that to fiction writing.
That was going to be my next question, but I'm going to go over to Red because I could ask a zillion questions.
Now, that was kind of the direction I wanted to go into, because just writing is writing, but when you start having characters and locations and time frames and a plot and subplots and all these other things in there, is this something that you developed and became better at, or did you get some formal training? I know when I was doing a little bit of research on you, it looked like you did actually go out and get some formal training on this, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I did. At first, I started with just learning by going to a few workshops. In fact, as a matter of fact, how it started was there was a workshop by a gentleman called Richard Scarsburg, who writes a lot of youth books, and he was at the library the same day we pretty well signed the paperwork, and I signed up for this workshop, and my wife was kind of scratching her head. You just jumped out of one thing and into something else. I said, well, why not? Let's get going. So we went and we both did the workshop, and it was a matter of fact, he had 4 or 5 of them, and then there was another one after that by another particular author too. So I've done 2 workshops with those people, and then I wrote for a bit, and then just before COVID struck, I went to a course with the University of Waterloo, advanced fiction writing, which gave me a really good opportunity to learn about pacing and tense and outlining my book and getting the characters to flow, to be able to have a better flow, and a lot of techniques that I learned. But I also learned a lot when I was getting it edited, because there's a lot to be done there too, to clean it up and make sure that it flows really well. But yeah, it did help me. I think that I've had a lot of people say that it's been written well, and I'm really glad to hear that, because sometimes I always have my doubts,
Peter, when you started writing in this venue as opposed to for dental supply industry, did you start out thinking, okay, I want to be rich from writing books, or I want to have some type of credibility, or I'm looking to get into a new group of people? Like, what was your motivation to start?
Yeah, it was to leave a legacy, actually. And I'd already, after selling the business, well, we were, I think, we retired from the business, so we were okay. I wasn't concerned about making money selling books, because I was doing it for the passion of it, and I did want to leave something behind besides the legacy of our business that we sold. So I do have a couple of grandchildren, and they did come to my book launch, and they were quite proud of me. And that's the kind of thing that I feel is more important to me than the money, because I think they're happy to see their grandfather moving forward and not sitting on his hands while he's retired. And that's been giving me the pleasure that I like about this writing that I'm doing.
The pandemic down here in the States really put a kibosh on all of that kinds of launches that we used to be able to have, where you sit and sign and everybody came by. I'm assuming Canada was no different, that you had kind of a hiatus for a period of time where the in-person stuff just did not happen. And I think we're back to some semblance of normalcy. So tell us about your book launch. I mean, how do you launch a book? I think a lot of authors are curious, because some do it virtually, some do it in person, some's a combination of things. Kind of lead us through, how do you and your publicist actually go about the process of launching a book?
Well, I actually did this without my publicist. I have a friend of mine who has an antique shop called Toad Hollow, and he had a whole, like, he's a real book lover, and he had a whole area, something like what I have behind me here, where he sold used books along with all the other antiques he had in there. He had all kinds of wonderful lamps and desks and furniture and whatnot. But there was a whole section because it was a rather large place that he had. And he said to me, Peter, why don't you do your launch here? I mean, it could be wonderful. It could be different. It's got the ambiance. So what we did was we brought in all of the couches that were the antique couches, and we put them all the way around the books shelf area. I had a very close friend who was also an author, and she decided that she would help me. I said, can you give me a Q&A program? So we came in and we got everything ready. We got the books ready. Everything was organized. We had brought in some cheese and some crackers and some pastries and whatnot. We laid out a table. And some people thought, well, can we have some wine? Well, I didn't want to get everybody too tipsy. So we did have a little bit of wine for the people who did want it. And then we got everybody comfortable. And then we did something for the indigenous people to acknowledge the land. And then we started with the Q&A. The Q&A went quite well. Diane, who was my co-host, basically, asked me a lot of questions about how I started, where I started. And I think we had about maybe close to 35 to 40 people there. And it was word of mouth. And we did advertise a little bit around town. And I had also a friend who was a potter in the same area, and he had a piano, and he decided that he would help me. So he played a little bit of jazz for us, and he also brought in a saxophone guy. So we had a little bit of music to kind of keep the thing going until we started the actual launch. And then when we finally finished the launch, people were kind of getting in line to get the book signed, and we had a line of people getting the book, and my wife took the money. I did the signing, and it actually was really, really well. We decided to organize it in such a way that it was going to flow well, and people were going to have a nice little afternoon, and it turned out really, really well. I'm going to do the same thing for my second book when I decide to launch it. I may do the same place, and we'll do the same format. I thought it was really pretty good. Yeah.
It sounds like a really nice event.
Yeah.
Did you actually read from your book, or you took questions and?
Oh, no, I did read. Yes, I did. Yeah. Oh, I should have mentioned that, but I did read from the book as well, too. Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Covers and titles. When do you lock those down?
Well, somewhere along the line, you do have to get. I did have a working title, and it was the same title as the book cover that we have now, Outfoxed. So I did start that right from the very beginning. So, but I do believe that with some publishing houses, they actually will change the title to that might be a little bit more suitable for the public. But we went with this one, even though there was a lot of books called Outfoxed. We wanted it to stand out with the cover. So the publishing house I was with gave me 3 different prototypes of the cover. After we gave them a description of what was in the book, and then we had the designers design 3 different books. So I belonged to a group called the Wordsmiths, and there was about a dozen of us who used to meet once a month and have our read our little stories and exchange ideas and whatnot. And I brought the books there, and I said, "Tell me what you think." And everyone said, "Well, no, we don't like these 3, but we do like that one." And that was the one that my wife had designed for me. And she wasn't sure what I wanted. I said, well, it is going to be about China and Asia, and I would like a coin on there because there is a treasure involved. And then I would like a man with a gun on it because it's a crime thriller, right? So we found a couple of pictures, put it together, and the publishing company did a very, very good job of copying what we wanted. And then we've had some very good comments on the cover, and I'm very happy that my wife did it for us because she was in charge of our website when we were in business, and she did a lot of the graphic work for our newsletter too. So it was a bonus having her along, to tell you the truth.
But Peter, do you have your book there with you?
I do. Yes, I do. Yeah. This is Outfoxed right there.
There you go. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, we'd love to have you read from there if you'd like to.
Okay. Let's see. I do have a sheet here with a little. Now, Is about 5 minutes good enough?
Sure. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, this is from chapter 11. Hong Kong in December was cool but not cold, and the lack of humidity made it comfortable. The blue sky looked exceptionally serene to William as he stepped outside of the Potager Hotel in central Hong Kong. William got off the phone with Patrick Riley, his new partner and legal attaché from the FBI. John Abbott seemed to be thrilled about being part of a United Defense team. William was hoping his new partner was up to the task. He wondered if he was a seasoned professional or a newly minted graduate from the academy. William stepped around a crowd of shoppers in the road as he made his way towards the rendezvous at the Gecko Lounge and Wine Bar. As he entered Urza's lane, mellow sounds of bongos echoed between the walls and vibrated right through him, drawing him closer to his destination. Midway through the narrow bar, he passed a couple dancing and spotted the Irishman sipping a drink and surveying the surroundings. William thought he was not hard to make out with his short red hair, somewhat curly on top with gelled peaks. He looked 30-ish and had a frame of a middleweight boxer and wore a 3-button blue blazer and gray slacks. As he got closer, William noticed his light blue eyes. His forehead was developing a severe furrow, and his high cheeks tapered toward a chin with a prominent cleft. He was handsome, likely a ladies' man, but he also had the demeanor of a field-experienced officer. "Hi, you must be Inspector Fox," blurted out Patrick. He stood and extended his hand. William took it and gripped hard. Patrick seized back firmly. "I'm looking forward to working together," said William. "Likewise. Sit. What will you have to drink? I'm buying." "I'd like a connoisseur's choice, neat. And I'll have another one at the same." The waiter removed Patrick's empty glass. William sat on the red leatherette stool across from Patrick and assessed him further. When the waiter returned, he placed William's drink in front of him. Then the waiter placed a glass containing a pale green liquid on the table. Next, he positioned an elongated slotted spoon over the glass and arranged a sugar cube on top. William leaned forward with a curiosity. It fascinated at the waiter's actions. Then the waiter used the cold water drip to dissolve the sugar cube into the contents of the glass. The pale green liquid slowly transformed from clear to milky, releasing an aroma of anise and fennel. "Patrick, what are you drinking?" "Absinthe. This is the only place in Hong Kong you can get the real deal." William smiled in friendly acknowledgement. "So that you understand, there were a lot of 19th century avant-garde writers and artists who drank it, the likes of Ernest Hemingway, Pablo Picasso, and others," Patrick elaborated. "I've never met a bohemian from the FBI before, so are you just adventurous or tempting the devil?" teased William. Patrick scrutinized William and calmly addressed his question. "Absinthe is also called Le Fée Verte, the Green Fairy. Being Irish, I grew up with leprechauns. I'm just hoping to get my wish granted so we can find Tracy Jordan," replied Patrick nonchalantly. "Now there's some blarney if I ever heard it. You may think it's blarney, but this bohemian is going to explain the finer points of absinthe. The intoxicating result produces a state of alertness, which improves sensory perception and enhances creative forces, therefore making me a better detective," explained Patrick. "You know, like Sherlock Holmes." Is that enough?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I felt like I was there. Especially love the way you described the drink too.
Well, most Irish people like Jameson's Irish whiskey or Guinness or something like that. I thought, why don't we have someone who's a little bit different? He's not quite in the lane that everyone else is in the lane. He's a little bit different. So the absinthe was one.
Is this character going to be in future books?
I would like to have him in the next book, yes. And I'm working on one right now, and I think I'm going to bring him in too because he's a wonderful character, I think.
One of the questions I like to ask authors is that sometimes you have a character at a certain time, and chronologically he's in the next book, and the next book, and the next book, and then all of a sudden we get to a point in time where it's now, today, and it's kind of hard to do something with that character. But sometimes you can take that character back before you really introduced him in the first book as he was developing his skills. Is that anything that you've ever thought about?
No, I have to be blunt and say, no, I have not thought about that at all.
Because obviously you're bringing him in with a certain skill level, but he has a life that maybe somebody, as they're reading these books down the road, might want to know, well, how did this guy ever get to be in the FBI? You know, anyway, just throwing that out for
Oh,
what
no,
it's.
no, I understand. It's a backstory, and actually that would take a whole new novel altogether, because
Yes.
that would be interesting. I mean, you could do something like that. But I have to also add something too. There was when we did the editing, my editor suggested that we change Patrick Riley into Patricia, and I thought, well, isn't that interesting? So we did. I did do 2 chapters where we changed Patrick into Patricia, and we changed her dress, and we changed her whole complete demeanor. And I thought, you know what? It's going to take a long time to change the whole book. Although I liked the idea, it was really a wonderful idea. I decided against it. But that just a little aside. I thought you might be interested in that. And when I was at my launch, I did actually read a chapter with Patricia in it. And I think a lot of the people that were there were really amused at it. How you can change a character with the same kind of dialogue, but maybe changing the characteristics and maybe the dress and whatnot. It's an interesting experiment.
That is
Yeah.
interesting.
I love that backstory. And by the way, I can't help but notice, I think you have a British flag behind you there on the right. Is that right? Correct?
No, actually, that's the Costa Rican flag.
Oh, sorry. Because I know you have a background with racing as well, don't you?
I have raced in the past. Yes, I have. I've done slalom racing and I've done track racing. Yeah, with a group called the Jagged Edgers.
And will
Yeah, that
that be
was.
brought into a future book?
I did actually bring a section of the race part of rally driving into Outfoxed. It's in there, yeah. And part of it has to do with a rally that is actually a real rally on the island of Newfoundland. It's a week long, and it's rather an interesting one because it goes all the way around the island itself. And I was planning on doing it 1 year, but it was at the first year, I think it was around $5,000, and you needed a car and probably a crew because you're probably going to need extra tires and you're going to need a mechanic, and and to get down there from Ontario is still quite a distance to drive. So you'd have to need a trailer and a truck or something to bring your car down. Because I wouldn't drive my rally car all the way down through the city and all that, through Montreal and all the other places to get to Nova Scotia, and then you have to take a ferry across to Newfoundland. But I think it's become quite expensive now. Last time I looked, it was close to $15,000 to $25,000 just to participate. That would be your fees to get involved in it. But it is quite the race, and like I said, it's done every year, and there's a lot of people involved in it, and yeah. But it's not what I'm going to be doing now. I mean, I'm retired from the racing because I had that epiphany on the straightaway in the back. At one point, I said, I don't think this is for me anymore. It's a little bit too dangerous. But it was fun when I was doing it, yes, and I did enjoy it.
What does that feel like to go that fast, knowing that you put your life at risk?
It's exciting. It really is exciting. I mean, you have to understand that we built those cars. There was about 10 of us, and we got involved with something called chump car racing because it was affordable. The sport was very expensive for most people to get involved in. So chump car was developed in the United States, where you could buy a car for $500 and get it passed by the examiners. But you needed to have roll bars, and you needed to be safety switches for the batteries and the gasoline. You had to have those on, and you had to have Nomex fire suits and helmets and everything like that. So you can imagine it was a little bit of an outlay, but we managed to swing it. And we would take a car and we would strip it. We'd take everything out of it. I remember working on it for over the winter, taking out the seats, and then we were weighing them too. We would stand, we'd pick up the seats and we'd stand on scales and weigh them and think, well, okay, we're reducing it by so much. And we finally got it down to the bare minimums. And then with the mufflers, they were straight through. We didn't put any mufflers on them. There's just a straight pipe. We had an XJS Jaguar, and we kept the 12-cylinder in it. And then we put a roll cage in it. And then you can imagine being in it with Nomex underwear and a Nomex suit and gloves and boots and a helmet, and you're strapped in with a 5-point harness, and you can hardly move, and you're steering it like. And then of course, when you start picking up speed, especially with the V12, it was really awesome. And then hitting the corners, going through the chicane, and following the line. I mean, you would get pretty excited, and the adrenaline is pretty pumping through your body. It's really exciting. It's like, I suppose you could have the same feeling on a roller coaster. It's pretty well the same kind of idea. You get that thrill going down there, and then your whole body is just shaking with the adrenaline. It is very exciting, but you have to keep your mind very clear, because any mistake you make can put you in a dire straits. So, but I do remember we had a lot of fun with the team, and I remember one time I ended up with a flat tire in midfield, and they came to get me they said, don't leave the car, just stay there. And they towed me around, and they brought me into the pits, and then they said, just stay there, we'll fix the tire. And then my manager came in and popped his head in the window. He says, it's still considered a lap. Don't worry. I said, okay, that's great, because they count the laps, right? You have to make sure that you have all the laps. So we did have a lot of fun that way. And there was another time when I was in a corner taking the chicane, which is that little bumpy part when you go around, and some guy in a Honda came in front of me and banged me right in the front fender and left a dent about the size of a football. I came back and I talked to my manager. I said, should we make it a complaint? Because it's supposed to be a safety sport. And he said, no, let's in the spirit of good camaraderie, let's just leave it. And I said, okay, no problem. The car got dented, big deal, but I'm still alive. So it wasn't so bad at all. But we've had some good experiences too, with the club. And then of course there's the slalom racing, which is a little bit different. We did that with the North American Jaguar Association. And I've raced in Cleveland, I think it was in Cleveland, and Columbus, Ohio, and of course up in Canada. And but yeah, so I still have my old car. It was a 1997 XK8, which I used to use for my track car. And that's where I did all my training when I was going to the track to learn how to drive on the track. And I still have it around.
What a great background you have. I love it. It's so
Yeah.
diverse.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have you ever done any radio? You've got a really smooth voice. You could be a great radio broadcaster.
No, I have not done any radio. No. Oh, yeah, thank you for that compliment. I'm gonna tell my wife. She's gonna be really pleased about that.
So, in addition to what you share with us about your book, what are some key takeaways that you want the audience to have as a result of reading it?
Um, well, I just hope they enjoy themselves. I hope they enjoy the story. Like, this is what I've been getting in a matter of feedback from a lot of the people who bought the book already, is that they've enjoyed reading it, and that to me is the most important part. It was laid out as an adventure story, somewhat along the lines of Clive Cussler, who was one of the fellows that I really used to like at the beginning of my reading journey. And it's developed in such a way that it is an adventure with a treasure, and most of Clive Cussler's books were modeled that way. So, and of course, I got a little bit political in the fact that I do bring in the Chinese state security, and I do have hostages, and I do have kidnappings, and I have exchanges and stuff like that. So it is a bit current, considering the situation with China and the downing of the balloon, the spy balloon, and things like that. So it does have a little bit of modern intrigue to it too. So they might find there is something that's rather fresh in the political intrigue, which I'm also going to try to inject into my next novel as well, and keep it current.
Sounds very exciting, Peter. I can't wait to purchase a copy. How can people do that?
Well, they can get it from all of the major bookstores. There's Amazon.com and Amazon CA, and of course there's Barnes and Noble in Canada here. There's Kobo, and there's also the Friesen bookstore. Yeah, there's a number of places. Yeah, there's also Apple as well.
Let me ask you a quick question, if I may, Peter.
Sure.
I've been working with a couple clients, and because they're outside the United States, sometimes they have difficulty getting some of the books that we produce in the United States. Have you ever had a problem with that? Or anybody that you know of have a problem getting copies of books that are typically available to anybody in the United States on Amazon?
I haven't really, no.
Okay. I'm just curious, that's all.
Yeah, the only trouble I've had is basically trying to find some books that are like hard copy, and there's only digital books left, and I would like to have a real hard copy of it. And of course, some of them are very expensive because they're rare, so they're unfortunate. But that's the only stumbles I've had in regards to finding books on the internet. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. We've actually come to the end of the show. We do have your banner that has your Facebook, it has your Instagram and your Twitter. If somebody wants to reach out to you personally and connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that? And who would you like to reach out?
Well, anyone who's interested in crime thrillers that are would like to see, I have a blog on my website that I try to reach everyone with, and you can reach me at peterthomasponza.com, peterthomasponza.com, and pretty well all the information about me would be there. So.
Thank you, Peter. And if you would kindly just drop your email in the chat so that we can post it for our audience, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see if I can do that.
And Red, how would you like people to contact you, and who would you like to contact you?
My primary method of contact is email and phone number. I have that available on my website, which is redolaughlin.com. Red like the color, R-E-D, O'Laughlin, O-L-A-U-G-H-L-I-N. So redolaughlin.com. On the banner, there's my information for contact. Give me a call on the phone. Send me an email, and that's the primary way I can help people with their books, their publishing. Those are two primary ways that I help people.
Thank you very much, Red. And thank you very much, Peter. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And hopefully you'll come back and see us in one of our other shows. We have about 40 shows to choose from, so we'd love to talk to you more. And our show today has been brought to us in part by the lovely, wonderful Diane Floyd Boehm, who you can find here in the Corner Bookstore on Thursdays, except for the first Thursday of the month, when we have Mr. Red O'Laughlin here with us. So thank you so much, Diane. Let's take a look at Diane's sponsorship. USA Global TV and Radio presents international award-winning author, speaker, educator, Diane Floyd Boehm.
I want to thank everybody for joining us today on this special edition of the Corner Bookstore, USA Global TV. And we're talking with the co-host of the Corner Bookstore, Diane Floyd Boehm today, who is herself an author of many books, not just children's books, but also books for adults. Diane, welcome to the Corner Bookstore.
Everyone should have their own library. Even children should start developing their library and know that what happens in a garden, it grows. And I want their library to grow. And never, ever get rid of a book, because what you might have enjoyed as a child reading and having lovely memories of your parents reading as you get older, you'll grow to cherish those books in another way. My specialty is to help people realize that we are all storytellers, and that if you have this yearning to get this story out, but you don't know how to get started, I want to be the person that you can come to, you can feel comfortable with. I'll learn your personality. We'll just go and have itty bitty baby steps, just like in my book, A Time to Fly. Before you know it, the young new author is ready to fly to and go to super professional coaches.
Diane's books are available now at dianefloydboehm.com. Charlie and the Tire Swing, How It Began. A Time to Fly. A Song of Peace. Rise, a Girl's Struggle for More. Harry the Camel. The Little Girl in the Moon. The Little Girl in the Moon, Moxie and Tycho Town. Moon League Adventures, The Serengeti.
And I'm saying, go for it.